In a land once ruled by blades and honor, peace was shattered not by men, but by monsters from the stars. Our story begins in Edo, Japan, a mysterious city once hailed as the proud land of samurai warriors. These fearless fighters stood as the ultimate symbols of discipline and valor. But everything changed when bizarre alien creatures known as Amantos invaded the city. They didn't just enter with a knock, they crashed in, flipped the entire map of the region upside down, and made themselves at home as if they were checking into a space-themed Airbnb. Soon, an all-out war erupted between humans and Amantos. These monstrous beings were determined to wipe out humanity completely, as if humans had insulted their alien grandmothers or something. To protect the world, a group of brave samurai came together. They vowed to fight back and drive the Amantos away from Earth. The battle was fierce and bloody, and many valiant warriors gave their lives, but despite their losses, the samurai made such a terrifying impression that the Amantos became paranoid. So paranoid, in fact, that they banned the use of swords by humans altogether. Apparently, the sight of sharp steel gave them PTSD. Among the surviving samurai was a man named Shinpachi. With swords now outlawed, he was forced to take up a job at a restaurant. Unfortunately, domestic life was not his forte. Chopping vegetables and scrubbing dishes weren't quite as glorious as slicing enemies mid-air. One day, his boss asked him to serve milk to two tiger-like alien customers, but things went south real quick. One of the tigers intentionally tripped him, sending him sprawling onto the floor, and then had the audacity to accuse him of spilling the milk on purpose. Classic alien Karen behavior. As poor Shinpachi knelt to clean up the mess, the tiger gave him a hard shove and threw him across the floor like yesterday's laundry. Watching this unfold was another man, a samurai named Gintoki, who was clearly not in the mood for nonsense. Enraged, Gintoki launched a powerful strike straight into the tiger's chest, knocking him out cold. When the second tiger realized Gintoki was a samurai, he tried to accuse him of illegally carrying a sword. But Gintoki, the king of sass, pulled out a wooden sword and said, "This is all I need to beat the stuffing out of you," and he wasn't bluffing. Impressed, Shinpachi and Gintoki became fast friends. They were soon joined by Kagura, a quirky, fierce girl with a monstrous appetite and a mean punch. Together, the trio started taking up odd jobs around town to make ends meet, solving people's problems, sometimes for justice, sometimes for money, and sometimes just because they were bored. One day, they heard about a bizarre golden beetle roaming the forest, with a massive reward promised to anyone who captured it. The gang, hungry for both adventure and cash, immediately set off into the woods. As they wandered deeper, they stumbled upon a man named Kondo, who had completely covered himself in honey, because the beetles love honey. He stood in the forest like a sticky, shirtless statue, waiting for the beetle to come to him. Our trio looked at him, blinked, and unanimously agreed. This is the dumbest plan we've seen all week, and they'd seen a lot of dumb plans. Ignoring Kondo's honey cosplay, they moved on and came across yet another strange sight, a man smearing mayonnaise on tree trunks, trying to attract the beetle with condiments. Further ahead, they finally spotted what looked like a massive beetle hanging from a tree. It was way bigger than they had imagined. Kagura, wasting no time, leapt into action and slammed it down with a single strike. But as the beetle hit the ground, they realized it wasn't an insect at all. It was a boy named Okita disguised as a beetle, because he was also trying to lure the real one. Apparently, cosplay wasn't just a hobby anymore, it was strategy. Before long, a crowd of beetle hunters began gathering, each arguing over who should catch it first. Just then, the real prize, a golden beetle, flew over their heads. Shinpachi, Gintoki, and Kagura sprinted after it, with the rest of the mob right behind them. The chase led them out of the forest and into the village. In the middle of the chase, Kondo got completely distracted when he spotted Tei, a girl he was utterly smitten with. Love-struck and delusional, he bolted after her like a golden retriever on espresso. But Tei, despite her sweet appearance, had the temper of a volcano. As soon as Kondo got close, she picked up a baseball bat and smacked him halfway back to the forest. Meanwhile, another major player entered the scene, Kotaro, a strong warrior who had once fought in the Great War. At that moment, he was wandering the area with his giant bird companion, Elizabeth. When he saw his old friend Gintoki being chased by a mob, he jumped in to help him by turning bones into jelly and faces into floor mats. The angry mob pulled out their weapons, but Kotaro, like a one-man demolition team, took them all down with ease. As Kotaro kept the others busy, Gintoki and his friends closed in on the golden beetle. It had nowhere left to run. Just when they were about to grab it, a giant frog-like fish burst out of a pond, swallowed the beetle whole, and dove back into the water. The trio could only stare in silence, their hopes drowned along with their prize. Later that night, a mysterious man named Nizo approached Kotaro. He declared that his sword thirsted for the blood of a true samurai. Kotaro, sensing danger, glanced at the blade and immediately realized this was no ordinary sword. Something was seriously wrong. He tried to dodge the attack, but Nizo struck once, and that was all it took. Kotaro was sliced into pieces before he could even react. By morning, the news had spread like wildfire. When Elizabeth saw Kotaro's lifeless body, he was devastated and immediately ran to Gintoki and his friends for help. Overcome with emotion, Elizabeth broke down in tears, sobbing uncontrollably. It was a rare moment of grief. For once, the bird was not just comic relief. Just then, Gintoki heard the voice of a customer. Stepping outside, he met a man named Tatsuya, who had come with his sister Tetsuo. Tatsuya had a hearing problem in one ear and practically yelled everything he said. Meanwhile, his sister sat silently, calm as a monk. Tatsuya explained that a precious family heirloom, a sword, had been stolen. He added that under moonlight the sword glowed with a haunting red light, but there was a catch. No human could wield it safely. When Tatsuya's father forged the sword, he died just a month later. And ever since, everyone who touched it had met the same fate. Something dark, cursed, and ridiculously dangerous is now in the wrong hands. Tatsuya believed that the stolen sword was cursed, one that could possess a human soul entirely. Now he wanted Gintoki to find the sword and bring it back. As Gintoki began asking him questions, his sister chimed in. "He only hears you if you speak loudly." Taking her advice too seriously, Gintoki leaned in and started shouting at full volume right into Tatsuya's ear. Tatsuya promptly delivered a powerful punch to Gintoki's face and told him to dial it down. Meanwhile, Elizabeth brought Shinpachi and Kagura to the bridge, where Kotaro was killed. She showed them Kotaro's blood-soaked bag. Kagura let her giant dog, Sadaharu, sniff it, then climbed onto its back and set off on a dramatic, sniff-powered quest to track the killer. Because who needs CSI when you have a super sniffer dog and anime logic? After meeting Tatsuya, Gintoki crossed paths with Okita, who told him about a mysterious swordsman roaming the city, cutting people down. He mentioned that the sword gave off a glowing red light, and Gintoki instantly realized this had to be the same cursed sword stolen from Tatsuya's family. At the same time, Shinpachi and Libovid were deep into their investigation when a villager confronted them. Suspicious of their intentions, he asked them to leave, but before things could escalate, Nizo showed up and slashed the poor villager into pieces. Elizabeth tried to protect Shinpachi, but Nizo turned on her and killed her too. Just as he was about to strike down Shinpachi, Gintoki arrived in the nick of time and snatched the sword from Nizo's hands. That's when he discovered the bitter truth. Nizo was the one who killed his friend Kotaro. A furious battle began. Nizo unleashed the cursed sword's power to try and take Gintoki's life, but Gintoki defended himself with nothing but his trusty wooden sword. Talk about budget defense against deluxe evil. In the scuffle, Gintoki fell off the bridge, but he didn't give up and continued fighting despite the odds. In the end, Nizo stabbed Gintoki with the cursed blade. Shinpachi, witnessing this horror, mustered all his courage and managed to slash off one of Nizo's arms. Soon, Okita arrived with a group of samurai. Realizing he was outnumbered, Nizo fled the scene like a villain who suddenly remembered he left the stove on. Gintoki, having lost a lot of blood, was rushed to the hospital. Later, as Kondo was practicing his sword techniques, Okita and Tashi came to deliver some alarming news. Takasaki, the strongest warrior from the war with the aliens, had returned to Edo and joined forces with Nizo. Their plan was to gather a league of dangerous warriors and take control of the entire region. That night, while Kagura and Sadaharu were walking, they spotted a ship. On its roof was a man playing music. Kagura snuck up behind him, raised her umbrella menacingly, and warned him to turn around or else. But the moment he did, Kagura realized this man wasn't just some music-loving wanderer, he was extremely dangerous. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from all directions. Kagura had to sprint for her life. Turns out the ambush was orchestrated by both Nizo and Mataka. While escaping, Kagura somehow ended up right in front of Mataka. The two aimed their guns at each other in a high-stakes standoff. Using quick thinking, Kagura distracted Mataka and knocked her out with a swift kick. But as she tried to run, More samurai surrounded her. Of course, none of them were ready for Kagura's chest-powered beatdown. She literally used her upper body as a weapon, sending every last one of them flying like bowling pins. In the end, Mitaka shot her from behind, but Kagura, despite her injuries, wasn't ready to surrender. She fired back and escaped, eventually finding refuge in a secret chamber. Not long after, Mitaka arrived and declared that now that Kagura had seen this hidden base, she would not be allowed to live. Gunfire rang out. The next morning, Gentoki woke up in his home, barely alive and being cared for by Tae. Her mission was clear. Until Gentoki healed completely, he wasn't allowed to leave the bed. But Gentoki tried to sneak out anyway to go help Shinpachi and Kagura. Tae, knowing him too well, stopped him with her special weapon. Let's just say it wasn't a gentle reminder. Meanwhile, Shinpachi was scouring the streets for Kaguru when he bumped into Sadaharu. The dog led him straight to the ship, and Shinpachi figured out that Kaguru was inside. But when he tried to enter, a samurai shooed him away. That's when Shinpachi came up with a new plan to sneak into the ship, though he had no idea that Nizo was also aboard. Inside the ship, Mitaka confronted Nizo about his missing arm, but he snapped and used the cursed sword's powers to trap her. A few moments later, he released her, smugly declaring that even with one arm, he was still the strongest. Back at Gintoki's house, the doorbell rang. Tae opened it to find Tatsuko standing there. Hearing her voice, Gintoki called her in while secretly packing to escape. As he grabbed his clothes, he noticed a note from Tae tucked inside. Make sure to bring my umbrella back on your way home. Because yes, nothing says good luck fighting for your life like a reminder about borrowed property. Gintoki's first stop was an old man who could provide him with a powerful weapon. Badly wounded and barely standing, he knew that if he wanted to face his enemies, he'd need something stronger than just willpower. The old man had given Gintoki a massive fruit and told him that the moment he ate it, his entire body would turn into rubber. But Gintoki wasn't even remotely interested in acquiring such a bizarre ability, and he wasn't planning on becoming a human bouncy ball anytime soon. Seeing his lack of enthusiasm, the old man had quickly backtracked, saying that the fruit was fake anyway, and muttering that only a crazy person would want to turn into rubber. Even though Gintoki didn't have any powerful weapon to defeat his enemies, he still decided to go help Tetsuko. Meanwhile, on the ship, Kagura was being prepared for execution. Mitaka and Takeshi had been interrogating her, but Kagura hadn't said a single word about her friends. Instead, she had thrown up all over them, probably the most aggressive form of protest in the history of interrogations. Mitaka had gotten so furious that she raised her gun to shoot Kagura again, but just then, Shinpachi had appeared and declared dramatically that he had come to save her. When Mitaka asked him where his comrades were, Shinpachi had proudly announced that he came alone, proving once and for all that bravery and recklessness are basically cousins. Mitaka had stepped forward, ready to beat the living daylights out of him, but before she could, a group of pirates had suddenly attacked the ship, and everyone got busy fighting them off. Shinpachi took advantage of the chaos, freed Kagura, and the two of them ran off to look for Kotaro. While the Shinsengumi agents had boarded the ship, Captain Okita had stayed outside with Toshi. Okita had boldly claimed that as long as the three of them were together, he had no fear of death, then immediately leapt into the sea like a noble dolphin with no sense of direction. His comrades, unbothered by his dramatic dive, had left him behind and continued the mission. Soon after, Gintoki had arrived at the scene with Tetsuko, who handed him a sword she had crafted herself, specially designed to counter the cursed sword. They now needed to figure out how to get to the ship. At that very moment, the same old man Gintoki had met earlier appeared once again and gave them a flying board, because why not? Back on the ship, the battle was raging. Nizo had shown up in front of Okita and Toshi, who immediately attempted to arrest him for terrorizing Edo and killing innocent civilians. Okita had fired at him with his bazooka, but Nizo had sliced the bullet in two with his sword, like a chef preparing bullet sashimi. That's when they had realized the sword was no ordinary weapon. Okita, wasting no time, had run away and left Toshi to face Nizo alone. Meanwhile, Shinpachi and Kagura had discovered a lab full of replicas of the cursed sword. Moments later, Takasugi arrived and charged at them. Just as he was about to attack, Elizabeth had arrived out of nowhere, shooting a machine gun from her beak and launching a wild assault on Takasugi. Because apparently penguins with firearms are totally normal in this universe, she had trapped Takasugi and told her friends to escape. Takasugi, not easily fooled, had decapitated Elizabeth, only to find Kotaro inside the costume because he faked his death just to catch Nizo. The moment he saw Kotaro, Takasugi panicked and ran away. Shinpachi and Kagura had told Kotaro to chase after him, while they stayed behind to deal with Mataka and Takeshi. Meanwhile, Toshi was locked in a fierce battle with Nizo. Though he fought with everything he had, he couldn't hold out long against the cursed sword. At that point, Gintoki had arrived and told Toshi to go after Takasugi while he took on Nizo himself. Right in the first clash, Nizo had targeted Gintoki's old wounds, but Gintoki had proved that he was made of tougher stuff, like a stubborn noodle that refuses to break no matter how much you boil it. Within moments, his skill had risen to match the cursed sword's power. By then, the sword had completely taken control of Nizo's body. In the fierce battle that followed, Gintoki had landed a brutal strike on Nizo's arm, leaving him unable to even lift his sword. Realizing this, the cursed sword had fully taken over Nizo, growing bizarre arms and launching an all-out assault on Gintoki. Inside the ship, Shinpachi was facing an enemy for the first time in his life, and Takeshi had tried to exploit his fear. Meanwhile, Mitake was still firing round after round at Kagura, who was dodging them all like a bulletproof ballerina. But Kagura managed to dodge every single bullet. She was so fast that she could snatch them right out of the air. Then, without wasting a moment, she slammed Mataka to the ground. Just as she was about to finish her off, Nizo suddenly crashed down from the ceiling. He had now transformed into a vicious beast, and Gintoki, who had been caught in his grip, lay unconscious. Nizo had completely lost control of his own body. The cursed sword was now controlling him, even forcing him to attack his own ally, Takeshi. Mataka had tried to retaliate, but she too was struck down by Nizo. At this point, the sword had fully merged with Nizo's body. It created a blade from its tendrils to finish off Gintoki, but at that moment, Tetsuko stepped in and struck Nizo with the sword she had forged herself. Kagura and Shinpachi quickly joined the fight and helped her, but Nizo broke free again and attacked Tetsu directly. Just as he was about to strike, Tatsuya leapt in to protect his sister, risking his own life to save her. During all this chaos, Gintoki finally regained consciousness, picked up his sword and launched one final attack on the cursed blade. Although his sword shattered into 2 pieces, his blow was so powerful that the monstrous spirit inside Nizo was destroyed, and the cursed sword finally released him. Eventually, after being wounded by Tetsuko's handmade sword, Nizo's soul was freed and ascended peacefully into the air like soft pink petals floating on the wind. At last, with Nizo's death, Kotaro tried to reason with Takasugi, urging him to abandon his plan of destroying Edo. But just then, out of nowhere, an alien pig appeared and grabbed him, because clearly this story hadn't reached its quota of weirdness just yet. Soon, more Amanto aliens arrived on the ship. When Okita and Toshi reunited with Gintoki, he quickly told them to get their friends and escape the ship immediately. He then went looking for Takasugi and was stunned to see that the same man who had once fought alongside him in the war against the Amantos was now siding with them. Just then, a massive explosion rocked the ship, and in the chaos, Kotaro managed to break free from the alien's grip. At the same time, Matako and Takeshi regained consciousness and returned to help their comrades. However, Takasugi told them to leave. He knew he would eventually have to face Gintoki, and he had already accepted that this battle was inevitable. Soon, the two of them clashed. Their fight was fierce, with neither willing to back down. Eventually, they abandoned their swords and decided to settle it with their fists. Gintoki grabbed Takasugi and slammed him onto a metal plate, a brutal move that left them both drained of energy. Even so, Gintoki picked up a sword, determined to end the fight and kill his childhood friend. But in that moment of hesitation, another explosion went off. Takeshi quickly carried Takasugi off the ship. Kotaro then told Gintoki that he had planted a bomb there, and the entire ship would explode in just a few moments. Without delay, he grabbed Gintoki and jumped into the sea, but just in the nick of time, Elizabeth arrived via parachute and saved both of them, because flight-capable penguins are always the MVPs in crisis situations. Moments later, a huge explosion erupted behind them, destroying the ship completely. In the end, Gintoki and his friend reached the city safely with Elizabeth.